Thanks for coming back to the latest episode of the Credit Clubhouse. We are your one-stop shop for all things credit. Before we jump into our next episode, we have an exclusive offer for our listeners. If you're interested in attending any of our conferences throughout the year, we have a great deal for you. Just head to www.dealcatalyst.io, pick the event you want to attend, and enter the promo code CREDIT at checkout. This will give you 10% off any ticket to any conference. As always, don't forget to follow the show, rate us, and leave a review. We encourage your feedback. It'll help us make these episodes a better listen for you. And now, on to our next episode. Welcome back to our latest installment of the Credit Clubhouse. As always, I'm your host, Todd Anderson, Head of Content and Programming at Deal Catalyst. Joining me today, which is an honor for me, is Stewart Mandel. He is editor-in-chief at The Athletic. Stu, it's great to meet you. Thank you for doing this. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I can't take credit for the whole Athletic. Editor-in-chief of college football at The Athletic.
Yes. Okay. So, for those who are not as familiar, I am, certainly a follower of The Athletic, but maybe just a quick intro, what The Athletic is and what's your role there.
The Athletic is a subscription sports writing site that began around 2017. Now we're part of the New York Times, and we believe, and I think most sports fans believe, it's the premier destination for high quality journalism, great reporting, great writing about every major sport. So yeah, you can subscribe either to The Athletic specifically, or as get it as part of a New York Times bundle subscription. I'm college football. I've been a national college football writer for 25 years. I am just one of many great writers on the college football staff. Bruce Feldman, Ralph Russo, Chris Vanini, right on down the line.
So, when it comes to college athletics, specifically football, over the last decade, how much has changed?
College football has changed in the last 5 years. College football has changed more than it's probably changed in its whole history. It's hard to believe it was only 2021 when NIL became a thing and college athletes could be paid for the first time. Um, Transfer portal, players being able to transfer to another for years, decades. You transferred to another school, you had to sit out a year. That is no longer the case. So now we have full on free agency. The conferences have changed dramatically. The Pac-12 is no more. So, and just a lot of NCAA, longstanding NCAA rules have gone by the wayside because they're just constantly under attack in the courts.
Ultimately, is this good? Has NIL been positive for the sport and college athletics? I mean, obviously, athletes getting paid is good. Lots of people are making money off them beforehand. But has everything in NIL, this new era, been a positive?
I don't know about everything, but I believe it's been more positive than negative, which is really at odds with, if you ever turn on a television on Saturdays, you'll see commercials urging people to call their congressperson about the SCORE Act, about saving college sports. You hear that a lot. Save
Mm-hmm.
college sports. College sports is in crisis. And in terms of the actual on-field product, though, it's had an amazing effect in that it's finally bringing some parity to a sport that has never had it, because the top programs can no longer just hoard all of the top recruits. Everybody that has money has a chance to make an offer to somebody. The transfer portal makes it easier to flip a roster much quicker if you take over a rebuilding program. So right now, Indiana, I think had the lowest all-time winning percentage in college football until a couple years ago.
Yep.
Vanderbilt, the longtime doormat of the SEC, these programs are in the top 10, right? We still have Ohio State. Ohio State's Ohio State, Alabama's Alabama. But a lot of programs that never had a chance have a chance now, and it's specifically because of these changes.
What about the downstream effect on, say, the lesser known sports, wrestling or volleyball?
hmm
Has it been as good of an impact for those athletes in those sports?
I think a lot of that remains to be seen. I mean, right now, we're not, to this point, we haven't seen much of an effect in a negative way. Now, you'll hear a lot of people kind of as a scare tactic. Like if you watch the ads on Saturdays for the SCORE Act, they are pitched entirely as past this or women's sports and Olympic sports are going to go away, right? Or they're going to be
Hmm.
decimated. And if you believe that, it's because the schools are saying if we have to pay the athletes, right now starting this year with the House settlement, they can pay up to $20.5 million to their athletes directly instead of just outside endorsement deals. And what the message they're sending is if it keeps getting more and more and more that we have to share with the athletes, we're going to have to cut some other sports that don't make money. Um, I'm not going to be naive and say that never happens, obviously,
Hmm.
but it's an interesting timing to be saying that at a time when women's sports have never been more popular, when the WNBA has taken off like it has, women's college basketball, softball. So I think in the past, people assumed, well, if these sports go away, no one will really notice. Well, no, there's sold out stadiums. I mean, the Nebraska volleyball team sold out
Yeah.
football stadium, for a special game. So it would not be so easy to just cut those away. The schools I do worry about the most, though, are smaller schools, kind of lower tier in Division One that didn't have that much money to begin with. If the athletes were to become employees and they had to pay them a salary, I do think that would be pretty devastating for the schools that don't make, 100, $200 million a year in athletics revenue.
So you mentioned the health settlement. You also mentioned the SCORE Act. I mean, how much of this is still being litigated in the courts today?
A lot of it. The House settlement, which was finally approved earlier this year, brought some stability and certainty in terms of what the schools can offer directly before they could offer nothing directly. But as part of the House settlement, they're now trying to rein in outside compensation, pay for play. I mean, NIL had just become a means for boosters to pool their money together and buy recruits, right? Buy transfer portal kids.
Yeah.
And you can't really do that. In theory, you can't really do that anymore because they've set up this college sports commission. But everybody seems to think that will be the next thing to get challenged in court. That is itself its own antitrust violation. So you have that up in the air. You have the question of are athletes employees? There's a pretty big case around that that's been going through the courts for several years. That's really what they are going to Congress for, to try to get a bill passed that would state as law that college athletes are not employees. And then there's some other lawsuits involving eligibility limits. The rule has always been you have 5 years to play 4 seasons. Um, and there's been so far, some successful challenges just in terms of like junior college players having those years not count against them. But the next frontier would be uh, no more red shirts. If you have 5 years in college, you can play for 5 seasons.
You mentioned the commission. I mean, does football, going back to football, does it need a commissioner like the NFL has in Goodell? Does it need an individual or a group of people to actually run the sport, maybe take it away from the administrations at these schools, Big Ten commissioner, SEC commissioner? Like, does it need a single point person above the conferences?
Yes, but I don't know how you make that happen because, like you said, the conferences have tremendous power. The Big Ten and the SEC effectively run college football. And so, how do you get them to agree to give that up? That's kind of the central tension of college athletics is that, and I've said this for 20 years, nobody's in charge. I mean, literally, there's the board that runs the college football playoff is the conferences. And so, in theory, they're supposed to kind of do what's best for the sport as a whole, but it inevitably turns into the SEC wants it this way and the Big Ten wants it this way. And
Yeah.
the ACC and Big 12 have a say. They're just not as powerful anymore. So, yeah, in an ideal world, it would be centralized. But to this point, we haven't seen anything to indicate that the Big Ten and SEC would voluntarily cede their power.
How healthy would you say the sport, at least college football wise, is today from, 10, 20 years ago? I mean, is it a better sport today because of the parity and, at least the athletes are getting some of the the revenue from this?
I would say the on-field product has never been better. I really mean that, never been better. And the way the sport is run has never been worse. Maybe not never, but it's gotten pretty bad. I mean, it's really, and we're seeing this right now very vividly. We've seen just this unbelievable number of coaches that have been fired in the middle of the season. Some really high-profile guys like James Franklin at Penn State and Brian Kelly at LSU. And when they get fired, the next headline is, and he's owed a $45 million buyout. He's owed a $53 million buyout. These administrators have been negotiating against themselves for so long that they have, I mean, I would call it financial malpractice, to give these long 10-year fully guaranteed or 90% guaranteed. And then when the coach underperforms, you need to get rid of him, you cost yourself so much dead money. And that's just the money you have to pay to get rid of the coach. Then there's all the money you have to pay to hire the next coach. Um, I mean, I think a pretty notable story going on right now is that the Big Ten is strongly considering taking on a equity partner. And so you say, well, the Big Ten, their TV deal is worth $1 billion a year. You guys have so much money. How could you possibly need more money? But the commissioner of the Big Ten, Tony Petitti, has been pushing for some time, and they have a proposal in place with a investment firm that handles the pension fund for the University of California system, where they would take a 10% stake in the conference's media rights. And so that tells you right there that this sports spending problem is so out of control that the richest conference in the country is going to possibly sell a 10% stake in their most valuable source of revenue just to get some cash up front.
I think that's probably only the start of it, knowing
Mhm.
this is kind of where the world you live in and where I live in kind of connect with each other as more and more, pension funds or investment funds are now looking at college athletics, whether it be NIL or schools and conferences, as to whether or not there's an opportunity to provide them capital in exchange for ownership and other potential rights down the line as more player athletes gain kind of more power with
And it's a
NIL.
no-brainer, by the
Yeah,
way, for private equity
yeah,
because for as much money as college football brings in, it's actually still undervalued. The percentage that of revenue they bring in relative to the NFL, and the NFL is way more popular, don't get me wrong.
yeah.
But if you compare the two, like kind of per eyeball or per fan, whatever you want to say, the college football is still undervalued because the conferences do their own TV deals. So if you're a private equity partner looking to make a huge return, you look at college football and say, well, that's going to keep going up. It's already undervalued, right?
Yeah.
That's just going to keep going up and up and up. And so, I mean, this is not the first. The Big 12 went through a period where they were considering it. Some of the individual schools have looked into it, but there is a skittishness, right? These are mostly public universities, university presidents. This is not as, I guess, clean as a professional sports organization. But if the Big Ten does do it, and right now they have to overcome two schools in particular, Michigan, USC, opposed to it. If as soon as one conference or one school rips off the Band-Aid, you got to think many others will follow.
And is the future of the sport, is it still connected to the schools? Like, are we going to see this like separate out sometime in the future as more and more money gets into the sport? Like, does it become like a mini NFL? Do they come up with their, college sports TV network and move it away from the conferences, or is just the conferences have so much power that it's hard to see them ever ceding that to something that's more centralized?
Well, in some ways, it's been heading that way already, and in the form of conference realignment, in terms of the Big Ten and SEC in particular, just kind of rounding up all the biggest brands and
Yeah.
consolidating them under one roof or two roofs at this point. There's been talk for many years about a super league. There was actually an organization that started to pitch this, but has since gone away. Where right now, and I think it's part of the beauty of college sports is that Alabama is in the same conference as Vanderbilt, and Ohio State's in the same conference as Northwestern. But
Yeah.
if you are maximizing this as a TV executive, what you would want is pluck the top 6 to 8 brands from each of those conferences and put them in a standalone league that has its own TV contract. Obviously, there's a lot of barriers to that, including the fact that all of these conferences' TV deals are locked up into the 2030s. So it would not be all that easy to undo.
Yeah.
And then, as we've said before, the Big Ten and SEC are doing pretty well as they are. So why would they want to share the loot with other conferences? But I think the most realistic scenario, and it would not be good for college sports, I don't think, is if the Big Ten and SEC as a tandem pulled away. So we're not kicking out Northwestern and Purdue and Maryland, but we are saying ACC, Big 12, Group of Five, we don't need you anymore. Like
Yeah.
everybody's watching our games. We produce most of the, not most, but the large majority of the revenue. So we're gonna go do our own thing. I hope it doesn't help that. I hope it doesn't head that way. Um, but it's not hard to see that because they used to say Power Five, now it's Power Four, but it's really Power Two. Those two
Yeah.
make so much more money than the other ones. Every week the TV ratings come out and you look at the list of the most watched games, and they're all SEC and Big Ten games, except maybe, a Miami or Florida State or Clemson game in the ACC. So it's how do you keep that together in the long run, right? Where two leagues are playing in another stratosphere. Now, somebody might say, well, it's Major League Baseball's that way, right? The
Yeah.
Dodgers make way more money than half the teams in the league, and yet we still see success stories with the other teams. I would also say the one thing that kind of, not the one thing, but a big thing that keeps them all together, right, is while football drives the bus, March Madness is a really big deal.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can have March Madness if it's not everybody under one roof.
Are you optimistic about the future of college football?
Optimistic but mildly concerned. I do think conference. So here's the thing: everybody complains the most, or is the most alarmist about NIL. And as I said earlier, I think NIL has been good for the sport.
Yeah.
It's conference realignment that really concerns me. And what we've seen, I mean, I think the while conference realignment has been going on for the whole history of the sport, this most recent wave that killed off the Pac-12 was really unhealthy. And you're seeing it now in terms of, yes, they created some blockbuster TV matchups like Ohio State, Oregon, anything involving Oklahoma, Texas, and the SEC. But you've also created a lot of really dud matchups against schools that nobody is tuning in to see Oregon play Illinois. They want to see Oregon play USC and
Yeah.
UCLA and Stanford and Cal. Um, and so I don't think that's healthy for the fans. I don't think it's healthy for Oregon State and Washington State fans that their schools got kicked to the curb. So over time, will we see um, some of the diehard fans of those affected schools just kind of say, why am I doing this? But the what the TV networks know and what they have going for them is this is college sports, and people have such a loyalty to their schools. And so it's not like in the pro sports where like the you know the St. Louis Rams moved to Los Angeles, and St. Louis fans are just done with them.
Yeah.
Like they're not ours anymore. But no matter what happens to Washington State football, like that's their school. That's those people's school, and so they stay very loyal. And I feel like the leaders of the sport are constantly testing that. They're constantly doing things that alienate the fans more. And but to this point, the popularity hasn't gone down, it's only gone up.
Think Congress could stop that if they,
Conference
Congress can't
realignment.
get, yeah, I mean, to the point where like the Big Ten and SEC kind of carve out by themselves, maybe
I see.
finally put Notre Dame into a conference. But, do you think Congress could stop something like that, the Super League, so to speak?
I don't know. I mean, right now, all of their attention is on this kind of narrow issue of athlete compensation and athlete employment. I have not heard any conversation about realignment and that sort of thing. Also, I don't think, knowing kind of the political landscape, I don't actually think they're going to get this bill through.
They can't seem to
Because they've
agree on
managed
anything.
to, there was a time when NIL was like the last remaining bipartisan issue. Everybody agreed the athletes should get paid. Um, and then over the last, pretty crazy to watch over the last few years how this too became a red versus blue state issue. And so um, the dynamic you're already seeing in Congress, in the House over the SCORE Act is it is a primarily Republican supported bill. Um, it and the Democrats are more concerned about, this could have a negative effect on the athletes. If it passed the House, and from what I understand, that's not totally unrealistic, it will die in the Senate because they will not be able to get 60 votes.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that for college sports is they don't have a plan B. The commissioners, the
Of
schools,
course
they
not.
have put so much behind getting a congressional to getting this antitrust exemption, and they don't really have a plan B if it doesn't go through.
So I always like to end the episodes here with a couple of fun questions. Do you have a favorite sports team and or hobby?
Um, so being a sports writer, you're neutral, right? You're supposed to be neutral at least. So it's been hard to kind of hold on to those allegiances. But once I stopped covering basketball, I used to cover college basketball, and I went to Northwestern. And so once I stopped covering basketball, I kind of went all in on Northwestern basketball. They finally made the NCAA tournament the first year that I stopped covering basketball. They made it a couple times since. So I don't really have any reservations about rooting for them like I would for the football team.
Tell us one surprising thing about yourself.
Um, I don't think any, I mean, I've been a rock fan and alt rock fan for, and I was in a band in college, and people don't believe that because I guess I'm not cool enough. But, I got the guitar behind me, and yeah, I like my kind of my two passions have always been sports and music, um I'm not really advertising it. But yeah,
One book that you'd recommend reading, other than what was your first book? Was it Bowls, Poles,
Bowls,
and Tattered
Poles, and
Souls?
Battered Souls. Yeah.
I do have a copy.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's kind of my one and only book. I did write a shorter thing in 2014, but that's the only full-length book I've ever done. My favorite author has always been Dan Jenkins, the late Dan Jenkins. He was a national college football writer for Sports Illustrated for a long, long time. And so, what I would say is, and it's hard to get a copy of this at this point, but if you want a window into what college football is all about, the passion, the traditions, Saturday's America, which he wrote in the 70s, um, stands up today. It's such a window into what this whole culture is like, and he's a better writer than any of us who have ever lived. So, and I go just also say another one of his books called "You Got to Play Hurt" is a year in the life of a national sports writer. Maybe only sports writers care about it. I don't know, but that's the funniest book I've ever read.
Most exciting part of your job.
Um, Saturdays. I mean, and I don't really travel as much as I used to. I'm mostly at home, but it's a really, what I'll never stop appreciating is you wake up on Saturday morning, you watch game day. I'm on Pacific time, so I don't watch much of game day to be honest with you, but those games kick off at noon Eastern, and you just know that 12 hours later, the whole sport's going to have changed. There's
Yeah.
always upsets, there's always crazy things. It's not a very long season. Um, the swings, the fan base's swings from excited to miserable are so quick. The surrender cobra has become a college football meme. There's nothing like it. I mean, I like the NFL, I like the NBA, but one game doesn't swing the whole season, doesn't kill a team's season or change a team's season the way it does in college football.
Yep, I would agree. And then I usually ask one prediction, but I guess what is the your prediction on national championship?
The easy thing would be to say Ohio State, but I do think that's too easy. Maybe they don't make it all the way. I'll go a little bold, say Texas A&M. I think they have not won the national championship since 1939, but they have looked um, they have been so impressive. They have two of the most impressive wins of the season, going and winning at Notre Dame early in the season. and then kicking the crap out of LSU so badly that they fired their coach the next day.
Which Notre Dame fans, which I am, certainly appreciated Brian Kelly being
Yeah.
tossed out at LSU. But Stu, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Keep up the good work. I'm a big fan, and see you sometime in the future.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for coming back to the latest episode of the Credit Clubhouse. We are your one-stop shop for all things credit. We have an exclusive offer for our listeners. If you're interested in attending any of our conferences throughout the year, we have a great deal for you. Just head to www.dealcatalyst.io, pick the event you want to attend, and enter the promo code CREDIT at checkout. This will give you 10% off any ticket to any conference. As always, don't forget to follow the show, rate us, and leave a review.